sounds very good. Can we do it today? No, because the procurement systems do not enable presenceless, cashless, faceless, and last but not least, paperless, eliminating paper. And this is a transformation which doesn't harm anybody.
Welcome back to the second segment of Timesonline interview with Dr. Hans Wijayasuriya, Chief Advisor to the President on Digital Economy. Welcome back, Dr. Wijayasuriya. Improving digital infrastructure is also one of the mandates. In that, setting up a national data exchange is key. Where are you at in that setup?
Yeah, so you're right. The two what I would regard as red letter digital public infrastructures, DPIs. The two red letter ones are the National Digital ID, the SLUDI, Sri Lanka Unique Digital Identity, and the National Data Exchange. Because these two digital public infrastructures in unison or in combined would enable citizens to transact, citizens to authenticate themselves in the cyber sphere, and for citizen data and data related to citizens and businesses to be exchanged with consent, very importantly with consent of the citizen, to enable the citizen to have a very smooth experience. The citizen not having to go to an institution or a help desk more than once, not multiple times to multiple institutions to get something done. And the National Data Exchange is, I would say, the second most crucial infrastructure component. Where are we on that? We are just floating the architecture and in the early stages of planning the execution of the National Data Exchange. And we hope to have a pilot stroke sandbox ready in the next few months.
Dr. Wijayasuriya, the National Incubator Strategy is being worked on by different ministries, the Ministry of Industries. Are you helping them in this?
So there's a lot of co-work and co-creation between the Ministry of Digital Economy and the Ministry of Industries. And incubators, the overlap would be their digital startups and new businesses of a digital nature. But having said that, we have to also recognize that digital pervades nearly any new business, because if a new business is to break through, they need to be digital in nature, even if the core output is not digital. And therefore, yes, answer your question, there's a close collaboration.
When will we see the strategy?
I think the core incubator strategies will come from the
Ministry of Industries. What about the startup strategy?
We need to take a step back and really look at what problems need to be solved to improve the chance of success of Sri Lankan digital startups. And these strategies should enable Sri Lankan talent and entrepreneurship to combine together with investment, both local and foreign, to create some winning businesses. As is the nature of startups and venture funding and venture capital, your success rate might be 1 in 10 or 2 in 10. It's not going to be north of 5 in 10. But having said that, I think the success rate in terms of building businesses which are bankable, which attract multiple rounds of investment, Sri Lanka needs to improve. We are in discussion with the financial regulators, both the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance, to build a more conducive, enabling environment, both for investors, also for the funds, and for startups in Sri Lanka.
You mentioned at a recent forum that Sri Lanka may design unique business models for the digital infrastructure that it creates and sell it to investors as public-private partnerships. Can you explain this to us?
If digitization or investments in digital transformation are to be sustainable, they need to be backed by bankable business models. Because if you put money behind a service or money behind a technology or a process which no one is willing to pay for, it will not sustain. So it either has to be paid for in terms of citizen satisfaction, or it has to be paid for in terms of the returns to the various stakeholders who participate in that. Direct answer to your question was that we will need to move from an era where government predominantly buys digital systems, simply pays someone to set it up, whether it be in the ID office or any industry or service. The government's interaction with the digital ecosystem is a procurement based. Then we need to be open for other forms of interaction, where it could be the licensing of a service, where the government issues a license for an entity to carry out that service and pay the government some license fees and be regulated in terms of compliance with certain standards. We should also be open for new forms of procurement. For example, outcome-based procurement, a form of procurement where government would need to put on the table a problem to be solved. That's the outcome which is solved. Not necessarily prescribing how the problem should be solved. That opens up opportunity for innovation. This is where smaller companies could compete through innovating better than their competitors to solve a problem cheaper, faster. This is I think, will be a key driver of bringing together, on one hand, the problems government needs to solve, and on the other hand, talent and the potential of our startups and our IT ecosystem. If you can bring them together, I think we'll have a very rapid and aggressive momentum in terms of digitization. Sounds very good. Can we do it today? No, because the procurement systems do not enable this. And this is where I was referring to new models. They could be procurement models, they could be licensing models, and they could be PPP models, where government could part invest or simply present a business plan which the private sector could take and run. I'll give you a good example of this with respect to telecommunications. Of course, I'm biased because I came from that industry, but dial back 25, 30 years, telecommunications was being done by the government through a department, through government investment, and government was spending taxpayers' money to build telecommunication networks. With the deregulation and liberalization in 1996 onwards, the government has actually not spent a single dollar of taxpayers' money on telecommunications for the last 25 plus years. And Sri Lanka has a very advanced telecommunication infrastructure. The telcos in Sri Lanka even pay the government billions of rupees in terms of fees and levies. We have, the telco industry is the largest industry with respect to FDIs today. And we have a good service, a lot to improve, but it's a good service to citizens. So this is just an example where the approach changed from one of buying and building to creating a business model and, to use your word, selling licenses to the private sector, foreign and local, to take it and run. So I would look forward to an era where we can apply this formula to many other areas of digital transformation. So the question is, could we apply, say, to cloud infrastructure? Could we apply to some of the DPI platforms? Could we apply to some of the industry platforms? And certainly when it comes to revenue generating platforms, you take ticketing or some of the high velocity revenue generating platforms, they certainly can be licensed so that the private sector could invest.
One registry has been gaining momentum over the past few months. Where are we at with that?
The project has kicked off. Both the Ministry of Public Administration and the United Nations is involved. This will be another key DPI guidance that we are housing and promoting is that we should make it open CRVS, where the integration with the other components of the digital economy blueprint, such as the ID, the integration with the data exchange, will be simpler if the platform is open, compliant with DPI principles.
Dr. Wijayasuriya, there has been a lot of resistance on MOSIP with regards to SLUDI. Could you explain that, please?
MOSIP is the platform. It's a DPI, DPG actually, a digital public good built on DPI principles for open identity. It's not other, it is inspired by other, and it is backed by multiple agencies such as the Gates Foundation and other international organizations. So this platform is open source and has already been brought into Sri Lanka in fact, years ago. The procurement that is being carried out by the Government of India is for the master system integrator, who will integrate this platform with various devices that have also been provided by the Government of India, the registration devices, biometric devices, and also the hardware infrastructure and data centers that go with it. That procurement and the role of the master system integrator ceases when the system is installed and prior to any citizen data being stored in that system. In parallel, the Government of Sri Lanka will evaluate and procure what we call a managed services provider of Sri Lankan origin, mandatorily of Sri Lankan origin, and it could be a private or public institution, who will take over from the point that the master system integrator leaves off and operate the system from there on. So that is a very important point, because the sovereignty with respect to access to the data
is paramount.
Is paramount.
You also mentioned some time ago about developing a strategy to address infrastructure energy needs of Sri Lanka. Could you explain that to us, please?
My observation would have been to do with the cost of energy.
For sure.
And availability also, where it applies to one of the critical layers in the digital economy blueprint, which is the data center and cloud infrastructure. So the cost of energy today determines the appetite of the major investors and major operators of cloud infrastructure when they select in which country or which region to place their infrastructure. And it's a battle between nations to offer the best enabling environment, and the key element of that enabling environment is the cost of energy. So that's something we as a government we would need to evaluate as a strategy or policy on how attractive we can make energy costs, given the challenges we have both on the fiscal side as well as in terms of the availability and of energy in Sri Lanka.
The AI strategy is also being worked on. Have we progressed on this?
There's a lot of work being done. Of course, on the policy side, there's a working draft of the National AI Policy, which has been open to public scrutiny also. And now the feedback is being collated to come up with the final policy. But over and above that, there's a advisory committee on AI, which comprises of some of the best brains in Sri Lanka on the topic. They are focusing both on the future direction, strategy, and looking at infrastructure regulation, policy, as well as guardrails and protection and rights of citizens in an AI era. But equally importantly, they're looking at quick wins and priority projects which need to be carried out to get AI into the hands of everyone very quickly, and AI into the transformation pipeline when it comes to government. So some of the flagship projects being worked on today. One is the Government Information Center, which was a voice-driven service for citizens. But the objective here is to automate it completely and use AI to deliver instant information to citizens on any topic related to interaction with government. Now, this was chosen as a high priority, obviously, to give citizens a better experience, but equally it is an area which is safe. It does not impact in any way on personal data. It uses open data. Now, as you move from a safe topic like government information to disbursement into areas where we have to be more careful with respect to the guardrails, with respect to policies, we will tread along a roadmap in this direction. Another safe area which we are working on is on automatic speech recognition as well as text-to-speech translation, which brings in the language element to the fore, because having AI equally address or equally enable Sinhala, Tamil and English is going to be very important in order to ensure that exploitation of AI would result in inclusive outcomes and that it will not lead to expansion of the gap between those who use technology and those who don't. I think it's very important that the principles of inclusion are applied and are foremost in our minds as we start exploiting these new technologies.
Biometric hardware is synonymous with the unique digital ID that we are planning to launch. There was a discussion on biometric standards used in Sri Lanka for verification. Should we be worried about it?
No, the unique digital ID and the biometric infrastructures which are used both for deduplication, meaning that when you submit your biometrics will be checked against all other biometrics in the system to ensure that there isn't a duplicate and that you're unique in the system. So that infrastructure would be compliant with international standards, and those will be part of the tender or are part of the tender specifications. And equally for devices which are used for capturing of biometric as well as for authenticating will be all standards driven. And there's a very mature set of standards where biometric devices are concerned.
Can Sri Lankans get into biometric hardware? Is there a market for them?
Interesting point. I think where the authentication equipment is concerned, it's something we are looking at very seriously. Whether the Sri Lankan market has the scale to spawn a hardware industry with respect to authentication equipment. In India, even Bangladesh, every corner store has a little biometric device. And when you total all this up, both the fingerprint devices as well as in the future the iris detection and even face recognition, yes, they would become a new class of edge device, a new class of peripheral. Just like you see a POS machine today, in a few years you would see a biometric device become standard. So the scale of Sri Lanka's market, certainly, I think it's a good point that and something that we are looking at already.
Could you explain about the sovereign cloud? There was a discussion of onboarding local and foreign parties to set it up.
Lanka Government Cloud, the next wave, which would be spec'd out and will come out with both the technology exploration as well as solution exploration and leading to open procurement of the next stage and phase of the Lanka Government Cloud. Here, yes, the expectation is that we would like to see both local infrastructure players as well as hyperscalers participating in establishing Sri Lanka's next generation of cloud infrastructure. We have to look at the power of the public cloud, both in terms of cost efficiency, but also the level of security that the public clouds today The amount of investment that has gone into those clouds can never be matched by investment or technical capability or research and development which can go into a local cloud. Having said that, Sri Lankan resident cloud infrastructure is also essential because there would be certain categories of data which should not leave the shores of Sri Lanka. You mentioned sovereign. Sovereign is a principle which is slightly different to residency, because you could have a sovereign cloud environment where the keys are actually held by the government of Sri Lanka, but the data can reside in a jurisdiction with which there is a kind of data embassy arrangement. Sovereign does not necessarily mean on ground in Sri Lanka.
Setting it up in-house.
Yes, so resident means actually located in Sri Lanka. There are broadly three levels you can think of: resident, sovereign, and public. So the cloud infrastructure that we need to establish will be a mix of these three. So that we spoke about the data policy and data governance previously. That would lead to the classification of data. And then according to the classification of data, we could use any of the three layers of sovereignty.
Dr. Wijayasuriya, after next 5 years, what is your typical Sri Lanka?
I hope the Sri Lankan will remain true to Sri Lankan values. I think that's fundamental. And in designing the blueprint, we will keep a close eye on the ethics, on internet governance, on citizen rights, and so on and so forth. The impact of whatever we are doing on the culture, for sure. That's a guardrail that we will use. The principles of inclusion I mentioned earlier, also important, that you're bridging gaps, not creating gaps. Hope for a future where the gaps and asymmetries in access to opportunity, in access to capability, in access to education, access to teachers, access to good medical facilities, those asymmetries are minimized through the use of technology. So that it should matter less whether you're a student in a remote village in Sri Lanka or in Colombo. It should matter less. I think in 5 years, it would still not be possible to eliminate the difference, but we should narrow the difference in the quality of healthcare you would receive in a remote area versus if you're 100 meters from the country's best hospital. These are, in any country you find these differences, but we should minimize. And that would be the victory. But if you look at citizens dealing with government, that's a subset of this big picture, because the digital economy is much broader than government services. But where it comes to citizens dealing with government, I think our aspiration would be to make it cashless, so that broadly the vast majority of the population will not need to interact with government using cash. And not only with government, even with other service providers, producers of goods and services, or between persons also. You should be able to exchange money digitally. Presenceless, meaning that you should be able to do nearly everything without being physically present. Faceless, meaning that who you are should matter less. That provided you can establish your identity and interact digitally, then needing to influence that transaction through some other characteristic that you have should also be eliminated, so that you don't need to be seen when carrying out a transaction. So presenceless, cashless, faceless, and last but not least, paperless, eliminating paper. And this is a transformation which doesn't harm anybody. It's very safe because it'll just make life better. But when it comes to empowering people with technology, we need to be sure that we use it to reduce asymmetry as opposed to increase.
That sounds like a very beautiful dream, but an achievable one, Dr. Hans Wijayasuriya. Thank you very much for the explanation, Dr. Wijayasuriya. We would head to the next segment in a while.